folks. Welcome to the Future of Faith podcast. I'm Josh Packard, the co-founder of Future of Faith.
I'm Keedren Boston, ministry practitioner here at Future of Faith.
In each episode of this podcast, we're going to break down one key research finding from our brand new study about listening and faith formation. I'll give you the national perspective, trends and insights.
I take Josh's big fancy data and make it, useful. Spoiler alert. Not everything works, but I'll keep it real with how it actually plays out in ministry.
That's right. We believe listening isn't just a skill, it's a sacred tool.
So let's talk about what happens when listening leads the way.
This is the Future of Faith. Hey, everybody, and welcome back to the Future of Faith podcast. I'm Josh Packard.
And I'm Keedren Boston.
All of this whole first season, I call it the first season, Keedren. I don't know if we're going to do a second season at all. Who knows? We'll see. We'll see what the future brings.
Sure.
I've enjoyed it so much. Maybe you and I will just do it even if nobody listens. I've learned a ton.
Same. I have faith in the future, man. So
yeah, there we go. That's perfect.
Yeah.
We'll see. So this whole season, I'll call it, we have been exploring this new research that we've done at Future of Faith around the intersection of faith formation and listening. What happens when you, as a minister, sit down and listen to somebody? What is going on? Is anything happening? Are you building trust at least? Or are you actually even deepening somebody's faith? And the short answer to all that has been some pretty surprising things about just how powerful the simple act of listening can be. And we're right in the middle of this section where we're talking about not just the impact of listening, but how to listen. And the research here unveils this sort of a model to us about being reliable, being relatable, and being curious. We covered the first two and what those mean. And today we're going to explore what it means to be curious, why that matters for people, in what ways that it conveys sort of that you are paying attention to them. But and I know this is your favorite one, Keedren, but check this out. Before we get there, there was a show that came out during the pandemic. I don't know if you watched it, called Ted Lasso. American football coach goes to coach European football soccer.
Okay, gotcha.
And so that's all the mismatched things that go on with that. And I love the show so much, and this one scene from it that I got this poster made, where it says, you can't see because of the glare, but it's Ted Lasso there drinking a cup of tea, which he hated.
Yeah.
It says, "Be curious, not judgmental."
Man.
Which is this quote from, often attributed to Walt Whitman. But I love that idea of that you can't do both, right? You can't do both.
That's true.
You can be judgmental and curious. And if you have to choose, be curious.
Be curious. That's good, man. I love that. And I totally agree. Agree. That's impactful. As we've already been talking, we know that even just from the data, from personal experience, that when people are heard and don't feel judged, that's impactful, But where it starts, right, is our curiosity, the fact that we want to know what's happening. We want to know what is going on, not from a nosy standpoint, sometimes could be that, right? But genuinely, for me personally, I genuinely want to know what's happening. I want to know your story. I want to know what makes you happy. I want to know what are you afraid of, especially if I'm, you're part of my community and I'm called to serve you, to serve with you. I want to know those things. And I want you to know those things about me too. So it's not just a one-way street where I'm finding out all these things. I would hope that you would want to know some things about me as well, but I don't expect you to. It starts with me. I'm curious, what's going on? I might ask, can you share more, about that particular thing? What's the reason? What is it behind that,
Yeah, you have kids of your own, so I don't know if you saw this too, but my son, at first, when we would ask him a bunch of questions, and he's I'm not first, but when he got to middle school, right? Mm-hmm. And we'd say who is this person, and who was that walking out of school? And he would say, "Mom, you just want all the hot goss." and we had to sit him down and be like, "You don't care at all about the middle school gossip. We care about what you find to be important and what is impacting your life." And that, it took a while for him to understand that, but then he I'm not wanting you to tell me who broke up with whom.
Yeah.
somehow materially impacts you.
That's funny, man. Listen, yeah, it's the same in our house. We want to, well, we want to know the tea. You know, they call it the tea, right? You know, um, what is happening, but it's because we care about you. Like you said, we care about what's going on in your world. And you know, if there's any way that we can lean in, like the best way to lean in is by learning from you directly and not assuming what's taking place, because there's so much stuff happening right underneath our nose that,
So much.
man, you know, some of the things have been heartbreaking, you know, when you discover those things.
Yeah.
And if we can build that trust in order to be able to get insight and information, and in order for us to learn from them and to help them grow, man, that's priceless. But it starts with curiosity, and I think that's a beautiful thing, man. That's a beautiful thing.
Well, and it gets one of the things that we've just, again, just from a parent perspective, not even doing this, you know, across an entire ministry, but just from one kid, is in that you brought up this point of assumptions, and like curiosity is a reality check against your assumptions.
Oh, yeah.
And it's like a lot of times the stuff we assumed that he was struggling with were no problem at all, right? Like
Sure.
the things we thought he'd be really proud of, like he just didn't care that much.
Right.
And it was you know, and it was other stuff that he was like, you know, he's like, oh, we got our small group project in biology together and submitted it today. And I was like, okay. He's like, well, no, that was a big deal because I was working with two people that I didn't really like, and I had to like, and they don't like each other, and like we all had to figure out how to get along. I was like, oh, okay, that was a big win for you. Like, but without curiosity, like there's no, I would have just assumed like, yeah, you did your homework, man. You're supposed to do your homework.
Seriously. Yeah, man, that's real. Like, and I think, like I say, like we're talking about the assumptions versus really having the information. There was a service, you know, I was at. There was some things going on in pop culture. There was some artists that was, you know, putting out some music and some very demonic type stuff. And I just wanted to know what our students thought, you know. And so during our time for us just spending time with them before service started, I overheard a group of middle schoolers. Actually, it was a couple of middle schoolers and a high schooler talking. They were discussing this thing, and they were, you would think that the music that they hear that's popular is something that, you know, if it's trending, it's what everybody's doing, it's something that all of them could relate to. And so that's what they're,
Yeah.
man, and asking these students questions, what they think about this particular artist and the music and things like that. It was like, oh, okay, so you feel the same way as I do about this, you know, or it's not something that you would think, like I said, you would think that they all would thumbs up some of the things that just because it's popular, everybody else is doing it. But when you really lean in and are curious about what they think about certain things, you'll find out the truth. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And of course,
Curiosity opens up those pathways to go a little deeper.
it does. And I think that's the thing. And I'll say it allows us to reinforce to them that, like, I want to hear you. My ear is here. Regardless if you want to share something, regardless if you want me to ask you these things or not, I want you to know that I'm available, that we're available, that this is a place where, you know, our mantra in our one of our mantras in our youth ministry is we're here for you. Right? That's a reminder for me personally that when I get there on a Sunday morning, I'm there to serve the students, their families, and make sure that they have someone that is going to listen to them, that's going to be concerned about them, and curious about them.
Yeah.
You know, so yeah.
Well, so we'll take a quick little diversion over here into the data and the data from the study. Again, we've got quantitative survey numbers and qualitative. So from the interviews we've done, and Cindy, so there's two quotes I want to share here with you, both from Cindy. She's a 40-year-old Hispanic woman. She says, if you're having a really serious conversation about things and you don't feel like you're being listened to, it's like a crushing moment. It kind of makes you question the whole relationship. And it's like, oh, okay, so there's something at stake here. Like being curious isn't just a value add, but like it not being curious could have a very negative impact. And she went on, she said, if I'm actively talking to somebody, I'm not getting any kind of response or feedback, that's definitely a sign that they don't care, would rather be somewhere else, or they're just not engaged. And that's definitely like a moment like, why am I even talking? What's the point here?
Yeah.
And so I think it's important to remember that of like, this isn't just a nice to have, right? This isn't just the leather seats instead of cloth seats. Like, this is a question of whether or not you get a steering wheel. And on the quantitative, on the survey side, it was over 60% of our respondents had said that one of the biggest barriers to effective listening in their own faith community is that listeners just often don't seem interested in their thoughts. And so it's definitely this place where, I think we see the positive that it can do that you're explaining, but there's also like, oh, this better be part of your arsenal here.
No, I agree. And that's important to note. I'm glad we're able to share that, because it's something that we need to recognize, so that we can calibrate. Like, there are times where I'm listening and I need to, okay, let me tap in, because of course we have things that life is happening, right? Even though we're leading, even though you may be leading, there are things that you're living, right? So it's like, while we're listening, it's important for us sometimes to recognize, okay, am I locked into what they're saying right now? Because I have to recalibrate my thinking too. And so if that's for me to even be honest, can you repeat that last part? I'm sorry. I want to make sure, that I hear what you're saying. Sometimes while we're listening, we do have to recalibrate. And so that's why this information and insight feel like is important, because we might not get it right all the time, or even while we're listening. Is sometimes we can be in and out, because I'm like, I got to get to this thing, or I got to address this thing. But if we can just take a moment to realize that if we're not locked in, that someone could be discouraged and feel like you don't care about them because of how we're responding. I'm not sure, and you can tell me this, I may have got it, I heard it wrong. But when it comes to listening, like a conversation is 50-50, right? From the speaker and the listener.
Yeah.
And so if I'm not listening well, but they're talking if I'm not listening to what they're saying, the conversation is going nowhere, If
you're not having a conversation.
You're not even having a conversation. Yeah. So it's a two-way street. It's a transaction that is, when you're doing it right, it's transformational.
Right.
Right. Like we've been saying, listening is not just transaction. You do it for me, I do it for you. When we do it right, it transforms our relationship.
Yeah. Into something that, we would call sacred, right? Like,
that's good.
So from an adult perspective, I think one of the ways I've actually been trying to do this in my own life is by assuming curiosity on the other person's part. So in other words, like, I don't let these sort of small talk questions like, how's your day going? I don't just respond with fine. Like, I assume the other person genuinely wants to know, and I answer that way.
That's good. Yeah.
And the whole point of that is that because when I ask them, I want them to know, like, oh, that's how these interactions with Josh go.
Yeah.
Right. So I'm trying to model that. But, one of the things, Keedren, I think you can speak directly into is that so many people find, like, okay, talking to teenagers is different, right? Like, how was school? Fine. What was your favorite thing? Fine. What do you want for dinner? Fine. Like, you call the dreaded F word. Well, and it's sometimes it can feel very difficult to like get underneath the surface with them. Do you have any idea, like tips or like phrases? What are some things you do or your staff do to like help convey to teenagers that you're curious?
Man, that's a good question. And it's something that I love to do. I do it at home. I do it wherever. I do it with adults. And so even if it's just a simple question as, hey, how was school this week? Because we know you have canned answers, right? Yeah. Because these are things that people ask them all the time. How are your grades? How are your friends? How are sports? Right? And so even on the simplest level, it's just a follow-up question. I'll ask, hey, how was school? And I already know I'm going to ask the second question. But now everybody knows I'm going to ask them.
Yeah, right. It's your stage.
Yeah. And so they say it was good. Okay, what made it good?
Mm-hmm.
And then now they're thinking like, oh, wait, well, I passed this test. Now they're thinking about, now they're having to dig, but I'm genuinely curious. I'm like, well, what made it good, or what made it, you know, bland, or what made it bad, if you don't mind sharing, right? And then now they're thinking more about what I just asked them instead of it just being a blanket,
Right.
question, or a normal question. So that's one thing that I do and that we do to kind of help take it to the next level. But even after we ask those questions, I think just asking about maybe their family, asking about, something else that doesn't have to do with them directly, but maybe a relationship that they have,
Mhm.
hey, how have I been doing? And, have I been making you feel welcome? Have we been making you feel welcome while you're here? Or what is it about this space, that you, what makes you come here? I ask, and I'll say this real quick. There were two young men in our ministry that, they are seniors, and cool dudes. Like these guys look cool. Like they could go into the main service and they would look like they're young adults and they fit in, but they show up. And so I always talk to them and check on them. And one service I asked them, I said, what makes y'all come here? Like what, because I know either way, you're welcome here. This is your whole church, right?
Right.
But what is it about this space? What is it about Firehouse North that you like? And they said, it's the atmosphere.
Mm.
When we come here, we like the atmosphere.
Did they say vibe?
Now they did this when they straight up say atmosphere, right? But same thing, right?
Yeah.
And we like how we feel in here,
Oh, that's
you
really
know,
great.
and
The
encouraging.
it's a this is one of these things where, like, if what you really care about is curiosity and you get to ask questions and learn things about people and you love getting to know them,
Mm-hmm.
this is where those other two parts of the model, being relatable and reliable, I think come in really handy. So, you ask the question, how was school? Fine. If you don't know what this, if you've been reliable, like if you've been taking notes or if you've been remembering things from somebody,
That's good,
you
Josh.
got the second question. Like
Yeah,
you don't have to struggle to figure out what the next question is going to be,
yeah,
as you've got something you can follow up on, and that can, not at the same time that you're being reliable, you're also getting to be curious,
yeah.
and that's so crucial. I'll give you two of my favorite phrases.
Okay.
Um, One is, if you could, like, I think if people could know nothing else, if they just started from a place of being able to say, tell me more about that,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like, if you just remember that, and
Yeah,
you get to the point where somebody's finished talking, you go, tell me more about that. They can't say fine.
right. They,
So it almost compels
like,
them in a very soft way to keep talking.
yeah.
But you mentioned this thing too, like sometimes you want to depersonalize it. And the other phrase that I really like, or the sort of like sentence, whatever follow up is to say, oh, that's super interesting. What would you want other people to know about that situation? Or, how that was handled by that coach, or,
Yeah.
this idea of like, you're not talking to me.
Mm-hmm.
What's some abstract, like, other people, and
Yeah.
in the course of answering that question, you end up getting, of course, their own thoughts and perspectives and insights to that. So I love those two things. Tell me more about that. What would you want others to know? And I'm not telling people, I'm just curious. Like, what do you think the big lesson here is?
Yeah, for sure. Man, all of this is good, and it goes together. All of this comes full circle when you're consistent, when you're curious, right? Um, and you've taken the time to build that trust with them. Like this is just not from scratch.
Yeah.
You have to start somewhere. And if you start with being curious, right? Relatable, right? Reliable and curious. If you start with being curious and being like, don't ask a question that you don't want to know the answer
Or
to.
don't ask a question that you already think you know the answer.
That you already right is like, let's truly be, curious and intentional about the questions that we ask. So that way we can be engaged when they share, right?
Well, when we do, the effects, I think, are profound. Okay, so
Mhm.
that gets us to all three of these are the three things that, in terms of your posture as a listener, that the data told us make people feel honored when you're interacting with them. Be relatable, be reliable, be curious. But we know there's another side to this coin, Keedren. We've got one more episode in this little middle chunk of the season where we're going to talk about what not to do, because we ask people these questions too. So we spent 3 episodes talking about the good things. Now we're going to come back in the next episode and talk about what turns people off, what tells them you are not paying attention. Man, everybody, we will see you on the next episode for what not to do.
Thanks for listening. You have been listening to the Future of Faith podcast, produced by Future of Faith with original music by me, Keedren Boston. You can learn more about the Sacred Listening Study and all the amazing things going on in relational ministry at www.futureoffaith.org. And don't forget to sign up for our newsletter, where we feature incredible ministries, sacred listeners, and cutting-edge research, all for free, delivered right to your inbox. Thanks for listening. This is the Future of Faith.